of the ergonomic problems that a lot of pen style machines have, and why a lot of people struggle with their lining with them. It's not just the other stuff we talked about with the cartridges before, but basically just the ergonomics are bad. On that, like the further your hand is away from what you're tattooing, the more and wobble and wiggle can happen. And good technique, the way I learned really good technique, you want to keep the machine almost entirely perpendicular no matter where it's at on the body, unless you're trying to do some fancy trick. It needs to be that way almost all the time. And it's stable because you got a tripod. You got one finger here, one here, and then the palm of your hand like this. And that way, if anything moves or changes or anything, you can still get the finest of straight lines and curves and everything. And when the cartridges get really long and far away from the tip, you can't do that. People aren't able to, touch this finger down and get that really stable like that. So you're using that guide finger, which, as we know, not only makes it more stable, but it actually makes lines hurt a lot less, like a lot less. If you have your finger touching right at the point of contact, it's just like pulling hairs. You pull one or two hairs, it hurts a lot. You pull a whole bunch at once, it doesn't hurt that bad. Lines are the same way. People have good technique and they have that. It hurts less. You get stuff done faster. You get a lot more one-pass lines really well. But you got to be able to shorten that gap, or at least the finger. You got to be able to get your finger down the back of the grip. This long distance between the lower part these have and the actual skin is... it's a lot further than it used to be. A lot of times, I don't know how you did it, but most people I know with metal tubes, when we would assemble them, most people would push the grip down as far as they can, closer to the skin, because that would allow you to get a really stable, hold on it. The coolest thing that could possibly happen if Franco could, figure it out, since he's got all the stuff at hand, would be if you can make like an elbow, like a 90-degree angle. So the battery sits on the back, but it does this little turn in the back, just enough to where it does like the old machines where it would actually balance over your hand so you don't have to hold it really hard. Just enough weight. That's how the Cubans are. I mean, they're light enough on the actual frame and motor that it's not weighing the hand down in a really bad way. It doesn't feel like a really old school like iron frame machine, but it's just enough weight to stabilize everything. So when there's any wiggles in the skin or anything else, it doesn't go anywhere. And you also don't have to grip it super hard. So even old timers and people who've been working really long days, you don't have a lot of carpal tunnel issues. It solves so many problems at once that capital L shaped ergonomic design is kind of the optical design. So the pen shapes look great, but if you take a little weight and kick it over the back, man, better machine.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because a big push was to get everything in a straight line, for the batteries to kind of get like everything to run straight, so it felt more like an
I feel like
actual
so
pen.
much of this evolution has been necessary and needing to come along, and it's oftentimes being done by people who they don't have fancy, really good, $1 million machine shops and ways to figure out a lot of the stuff. So it's people who are just doing the best with what they have to figure it out. So there's a lot of awkward steps, and in some ways it feels like one of those sort of like tail wags the dog scenarios. You know what I mean? There are a lot of things, and how we ended up with cartridges, and again, needles. That's another big one I get into. Needles, people using bug pens and tight needle groupings and all that stuff. A lot of that comes from the tools that were first doing this stuff, that were good, that were interesting, that were new and fun, were ones that work better for portrait style tattooing. And that middle range, that the type of force and stuff they need to do that kind of tattooing was suited to that, but not for traditional stuff, not for so many other standard kinds of tattooing and stuff. So basically that's where all the money was. Everybody chased the money. Manufacturers are making what sells, makes sense. And then now we've got it where everybody is using tools that are optimized for portrait artists, and we're trying to use them for other stuff. So I'm not saying we should take that away from them, but there does need, if they want to reach that part of the market and let tattooing get the highest quality stuff available, those gaps need to be shored up a little bit.